Continuing on with the Milgram study, it wasn't actually a study about memory, it was actually a study about obedience to authority. There were 3 different roles within the study. All 3 are pictured here. One is the experimenter, which we'll talk about in a moment, but that's this gentleman. This one in the suspenders that is being strapped into a chair is the learner, and this one here that's helping strap in is the teacher. The teacher is told that they have to help teach the learner different lists of words, and the teacher is then supposed to shock the learner for every wrong answer that they give. So they're told that it's basically study for memory to see if punishment can help memory. The shocks range from 15 volts to 450, and I'll show you what the generator looks like in a moment. Every time the learner makes a mistake, the shocks increase by 15 volts. So it gets worse and worse the more mistakes that they make. So going back to the original idea for the experiment, Milgram wondered how far this teacher would go hurting somebody that they don't even know, this learner, just because somebody is telling them to, this experimenter. How far would they go in hurting someone else if following orders? So just closer in here, this person is hooked up to a shock generator here, and it would shock their hands and deliver increasing numbers of volts. This is the setup. So what we just saw is in this room separately with the student, where the wire is connected to what's shocking them around their wrists here. And they signify their answer not by speaking, but by pushing a number on a dial here, 1, 2, 3, or 4, I believe. The teacher is in the other room, and the experimenter is in the room with the teacher. This is that shock generator panel. The teacher would sit here, speak into this microphone, and flip one of these switches down when they were giving a shock for a wrong answer. They would also see the learner's answer up here, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that they're pushing down on the other side of the room. So the volts would go from slight shock to danger, severe shock, to at the very end here, XXX, which is all we can infer is that means very bad. So again, 15 to 450 volts. Each incorrect answer, the teacher would have to give the next higher voltage, which goes up by 15 volts. And if we go back to all this panel, you can see all of the different levels of shock that we have increasing by 15 volts. So we have slight shock to 375, danger, severe shock to the highest, which is 450, and it just says XXX. So at the 75 volt mark, the learner would grunt. At 120, he would shout in pain. 150, he would refuse to continue with the experiment. 200, he would complain about a heart condition. 300, he screams, refuses to answer, and then 330 plus would just be silence. So again, getting back to the question at hand, could the Holocaust happen here in the United States? Are we any different than the German soldiers that would do horrible things to Jewish persons because they were following orders? So when the teacher would hesitate, which inevitably many of them did, or they resisted, the experimenter would have certain things that he would say. So first he would say, "Please continue." Oftentimes that would be enough to get the teacher to continue on. He would also say, "The experiment requires you to continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on." How far do you think that they went? So think about this for a moment. How far do you think the teachers went from 15 volts to 450 volts in delivering those shocks to someone that they didn't know? Perhaps under the orders of the experimenter. So if you think that they actually are going to shock the other people, when do you think that they will disobey? So you could go back to that list of when the learner would make certain noises or say certain things, and think about when and there you think that they will disobey. Okay, before the experiment was conducted, Milgram asked experts what they think would happen within, like, experts in psychology and things like that. They were told about the experiment, and then they gave their opinion on when they thought people would disobey, or if they thought people would disobey. So what do you think they predicted? So this is going to be what the experts predicted. They would disobey around 135 volts, and only 0.1 would deliver the max possible shock. That's only 1 in 1,000. So 0.1 would go all the way to the end. Keep that in mind, 0.1. So go ahead and watch video 6. Pause this and then come back when you're done. Okay, so what did happen? Remember 0.1? Instead, 65% went all the way to the end. 65%. That's a huge difference. So back up here, we've got going from 15 to 240, 100% went all the way to 240. It means everybody obeyed and continued on to 240. We got to 255 to 300, we have 88%. Extreme intensity shock, 315 to 360, we've got 68%. And then if they were there at 375, they went on all the way to the end with 65%. Okay, so overall, 65% of the participants gave the maximum shock to the learner. And to this point, I haven't explained the full part of the study, but this word cues me to do so. The Confederate. So Confederate has a particular meaning in research, meaning that the person is in on the study and isn't a participant. So the only person that was the participant in the study was the teacher. The experimenter was in on it and the learner was in on it. They were both actors. They knew what to do and when to act and what to say, but the teacher was a real person who didn't know what was going on. So, additionally, after the study was concluded for that participant, they were told that nobody was harmed in the process of this study. So the shocks that the supposed learner was getting were actually all fake shocks. They were just acting like they were in pain, but they weren't really in pain. So those are some things to consider when thinking about the study, that they weren't really being hurt, but the teacher did not know that. The teacher thought it was real. So even after the Confederate screamed, said he didn't want to do the study, and stopped responding altogether, which might mean what? That they were seriously injured or maybe even dead? They continued. 65%. And participants responded in a lot of different ways, but they were mostly just anxious to what was happening. And after the participants had completed the study, they were debriefed. Again, they were told that it wasn't real, that the person wasn't hurt. And after that, most said that they were glad they participated. So 84% were glad. Here's that anxiousness we see. And this is one of the original experiment participants during the study. And so Milgram stated, the most fundamental lesson of our study is that ordinary people, simply doing their jobs, and without any particular hostility on their part, can be agents in a terrible, destructive process. So if ordinary people would do something like this without any hostility, what could people that are racist in the Holocaust, for example, could help explain a little bit, just a little, perhaps, and how they could do those things. Good people sometimes do bad things, Mr. Rogers. Why did people obey? So let's think about why people did obey. So why did they follow the instructions if they were technically able to disobey? You have to continue. No, they don't have to. It's just an experiment. They could have left. Why did they hurt someone when they knew it was wrong? Continue even though they had previously paused, perhaps, and tried to stop. Okay, we'll stop here.